Welcome back to the Pelanero Taylor Show on this Wednesday afternoon. We're very pleased to have with us Ethan Peck, who's an associate for the National Centre's Free Enterprise Project, the Conservative Movement's only full-service shareholder activism and education program. Before pursuing a career in political advocacy, he worked as an audio engineer and music producer in New York City, as well as an editor for the Jerusalem Post in Jerusalem. He credits both experiences instrumental to his eventual departure from the left. He holds a master's degree in counterterrorism from the Interdisciplinary Center in Herzliya, Israel, and he's going to talk about his article, "The ADL Smeared Me with Anti-Semitism, but I'm Jewish." Welcome to the show, Ethan. So I guess not too many people with master's degree in counterterrorism from Herzliya and editors for the Jerusalem Post have been called anti-Semitic. What did you do wrong in their eyes?
I was on the right and I said the word globalism. Uh,
Right.
that's basically all I did. But yeah, what I do is I file share, me and the organization I work for, the National Center for Public Policy Research. We file shareholder proposals at corporate shareholder meetings to try to pull corporations back to fiduciary duty and back to neutral and away from politics. We don't even push
Mm,
them to the right. We just try to get them out of the left.
mm.
And in one of our shareholder proposals that went after corporate funding of the World Economic Forum, we used the word globalist, and apparently that's a cardinal sin according to the woke
Mm.
ADL.
Just before we launch into that, can you just give us some examples of how corporations have turned to the left? What are the bad things that they're doing that you need to pull them back from?
Yeah, well, if I'm sure a lot of people have already heard this term, but ESG, it's more
Yeah,
popular in America. But
yeah, yeah.
ESG sort of it stands for environmental, social, and governance. It's basically just code for Marxism, and
Mm,
so corporations are now doing what the government can accomplish, and the government's doing what the corporations can accomplish. So it's very fascistic. They're kind of working together. And this sort of public-private partnership, which is exactly what the World Economic Forum pushes, is a way for corporations to use shareholder money to push a left-wing agenda like
mm,
LGBT issues, support for transing children, equity, diversity, equity, and inclusion, hiring by race, sex, and orientation.
yeah.
Um, Pushing net zero policies and demonizing reliable energy. All this from the corporate side.
Mm.
Citizens
And
want to debate this in the public. We can do that, but it doesn't belong in the corporation.
well, I'd be surprised. I think that I was talking to another guy about that and the sheer power of some of these investment companies and corporations and hedge funds and whatever, BlackRock. I don't know much about finance, but basically, these guys are using investors' money, pensioners, people with two-parent families, sort of thing. Conservatives, normal people living out in what it flyover land or whatever, and kind of using their money to arrogate themselves power, and they're not held accountable for it. I mean, we observe the sort of political scene very relatively closely. I mean, on both sides, but the corporate scene, the shareholder scene, is something we don't know much about. So pensioners, people or people who've invested their pension funds, they don't know where this pension money, their money, is being spent on projects they don't support at all. And you're kind of that's your project. That's what you're trying to do. You have an eye on that, and you're trying to drag them back. And for that, you were called anti-Semitic because you used the word globalist, and that is supposed to. Why is that supposed to be anti-Semitic? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. Can you explain?
Yeah. Well, first of all, yeah, you got it exactly right. That's the prime violation, using other people's money. So that's exactly what BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street and ISS and Glass Lewis and Fidelity and Vesco, that's what they get so wrong. Because, like I said, like, people should be able to hold opposing beliefs. They do. We argue them out in Congress, but to use other people's money, 70% of people don't support trans and kids, but then 100% of their money gets used by corporations to fund organizations that push this. That's not right. And so we use the word globalist, honestly, because in the shareholder proposal that we put forward at the company, we couldn't
Mm,
just say World Economic Forum because
mm,
if it's too specific, the SEC shoots you down. And so we just kind of to like use a more blanket statement. So we just said globalist organization. to be, more neutral and encompass not just the World Economic Forum, but the Council on Foreign Relations, UN. But we then tailored it towards the World Economic Forum afterwards. That's just because of the way the SEC rules work. And we said globalist because we meant globalist. They are
Mm,
globalists. I didn't mean Jew, but there are people, far right lunatics, that use the word globalist very
mm,
often to mean Jew.
mm,
But that's not how we used it. And this idea that a few bad actors should make some words off limits because
mm,
they use it as a dog whistle. It shouldn't be mean. We're not using it as a dog whistle. We
mm,
meant globalist,
mm.
not Jew. I'm
Okay.
Jewish.
I, exactly. I agree. We'll talk a bit more about that, what the ADL's motives were. But I just want to, are you now going to do a public service for me? Because I use the word globalist all the time, but I don't quite know what it means. I mean, I kind of use it. It's the advantage of it is precisely because it's not. I don't mean to knock the Jews or anything. It's just that um, it's a kind of fuzzy definition. It's a kind of our enemies. So we're playing back. They call us far right or whatever. I'm not far right
Yeah.
by any means, but it's a kind of fuzzy definition. But what sort of things do globalists believe? I mean, we're engaged in a joint endeavor here to tell our viewers what a globalist is.
Yeah, that's this is a good endeavor. So I think a globalist is somebody that doesn't believe necessarily in national sovereignty or not strongly. So enforceable borders is something that a globalist might oppose. Another thing that a globalist really values is the partnerships and of different nations with uh different corporations all working in tandem to but the issue with that is like look at the UN. They put forward like the 17 sustainable development goals, and they have other countries sign on to it, but I don't agree with 90% of the stuff in there. And so why should
Mm,
some bureaucrat from
mm,
Zimbabwe or Iceland have any
mm,
say over what
mm,
I do in New York? They're not
mm.
my representative. So that's
Right, right.
taxation without representation kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
right, yeah.
that's the globalism that I oppose. And then
Mm,
working with the interests of multinational conglomerate corporations together,
mm,
that's what I mean by globalist. And by the
mm,
way, this has nothing to do with Jews or Judaism. Some
mm,
of the people, a few people might happen to be Jews, but and some of
mm,
the crazy, really far right people might
mm,
try to
mm,
notice patterns in some stupid
mm,
way.
mm.
But that's
Okay,
that's not what we're
Ethan,
doing.
we just got to go into a news break, a 60-second news break, and we'll carry on this very theme because it's very interesting.
Yeah.
This is Peleneros Taylor Show. We'll be back after a news break.